critical of it and other election machines before the election. In 2019, look at this. In December, 3 Democratic senators, Warren, Klobuchar, and Wyden, 1 Democratic congressman, Mark Pocan, they were sounding the alarm out. They're quiet now, but they said, quote, Dominion's very limited information available in the public domain about their operations and financial performance. The 4 Democrats last year went on to highlight serious voting issues in multiple states using several different machines. Quote, in 2018 alone, voters in South Carolina were reporting machines that switched their votes. Meanwhile, scanners were rejecting paper ballots in Missouri, and busted machines were causing long lines in Indiana. Democrats said this. According to the lawmakers, researchers recently uncovered previously undisclosed vulnerabilities in nearly 3 dozen back-end election systems in 10 states. Keep in mind, similar concerns caused the state of Texas to reject Dominion voting systems on 3 separate occasions, once in 2013, then after testing it out, according to the AG and the Secretary of State, they looked into the system twice in 2019, didn't meet their standards in Texas. Meanwhile, 2018, prominent tenured professor at Princeton, specializing, believe it or not, I didn't know such a thing existed, in election machinery and policy and security. Guy's name is Andrew Appel. He had an op-ed blasting Dominion over security concerns. 2018, the AP reported Dominion, quote, long skimped on security in favor of convenience, making it more difficult to detect intrusions. New York Times even criticized them this year. During Georgia's primary in June, they said Dominion's new machines required too much extra power for aging polling locations, blowing fuses, never powering on. In others, workers were still being trained just days before the election. They struggled with setup. They go on to say the electronic poll books also were plagued by freezing software and user error. Be keeping track, Senators Warren, Klobuchar, Biden, Wyden, tenured professor, state of Texas, the AP, the New York Times. You got people from all political persuasions surrounding these Dominion voting systems, hardly part of the vast right-wing conspiracy. Now, if in a divided country like this one, you got Democrats, Republicans, and the media before the election agreeing that this is not the best system, why was it used in the first place in 28 states? Here's another question. Don't you think we, the people, deserve better? Don't we deserve better? And now if you bring up Dominion, you're a conspiracy theorist by the biggest conspiracy theorist in Washington, the media. So how is that possibly fair? How is that right? And whether these machines worked well in this election is yet to be determined. But why were they used in the first place is my question. What about the hundreds of sworn affidavits signed under the penalty of perjury? Are their stories not worthy of being heard? Where are you, Senator Warren, Senator Klobuchar? No longer care about election irregularities as long as you get a result that you think you want? You think the media mob would be doing it right now if thousands of uncounted ballots this week turned up in a close state for Joe Biden? You think the media would be silent? You think they'd care at all? They don't seem to care at all. Ultimately, the only thing I know for certain is going forward is that America's powerful institutions, including the mob and the media, big tech, that mob, the Democratic Party, socialist mob, the deep state mob, they don't really care about the truth. They don't care about justice. They don't care about equal application of our laws, equal justice under the law. And that's what I was telling you for 3 years when we told a story that nobody else would tell about the real Russia collusion. That would be Hillary's dirty dossier. And then, of course, lying to FISA courts and spying on 2016 candidate Trump and President Trump later. The only thing they seem to care about is power. They'll do and say anything to get it. And that is why we will always, on this show, at least my hour, we're going to go in our direction independently because they're not going to do their job. I have no faith in any of them to put the work in to tell you the truth. That's sad. More on this coming up, Kayleigh McEnany. But first, we turn to the state of Wisconsin. Democrats are now attempting there to change the rules in order to restrict an upcoming recount. Okay, when do you get to change the rules after the game's played? Here with more is RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel and former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. Reince, you're from Wisconsin. What's going on there?
Well, Sean, you can't make this stuff up. First of all, the basis of the Trump recount complaint is that Wisconsin unlike a lot of states, it's actually not an early vote state. So what happened was the Wisconsin Election Commission, the clerks, created a different system. And they said you can vote in person absentee, but that requires an absentee ballot application, which many of these counties didn't adhere to. So the Trump campaign looks at their case. This is a major part of it. And they say, you know what? We've got a case here in Wisconsin. These applications were never filed. They transfer their $3 million to the state of Wisconsin. They file their petition. And then the Wisconsin Election Commission says, well, let's have an emergency meeting. And they put forward a new recount manual. Now, this is last night until about midnight, to change the rules so that the Trump campaign can't actually see the absentee ballot applications at the very last second.
Okay, well, so
it is unbelievable.
How many votes would that impact potentially?
Potentially over 60,000 in Milwaukee alone.
That's enough to change the election, isn't it?
It's enough to change the election, but there's more to it. There's clerks that are changing address forms. There is this issue of indefinitely confined. I know you've talked about this. These are people who can't leave nursing homes generally, and they don't have identification. It's usually a pretty small number. Well, the Dane County clerk back in March declared that all voters could actually declare themselves indefinitely confined and then not have to show an identification at the poll. So it was a way to get around showing voter ID. It's like everyone, bringing their dog on the plane and saying it's an emotional support. And, oh, okay, then bring your dog. I'm indefinitely confined. You don't need an ID. Here's a ballot. That's what's been going on. And so this complaint from the Trump campaign in Wisconsin, it's a very legal action. This is a purely legal complaint on very serious matters that we really need to deal with in the state of Wisconsin.
Let's get an update from you, Ronna.
So in Michigan, actually, we just had the Board of Canvassers meet in Detroit, and 71% of the precincts in Detroit did not reconcile. So what does that mean? The poll book said this many absentee ballots went out in Detroit, 100, but 200 came back. How does that happen in 71% of the precincts? So the two Republicans on the board said, we're not going to certify the election. And then, Sean, the doxing, the bullying, the harassment, the horrific accusations towards these two board members, calling them racist, happened. The Democrats came in and said, you know what, we'll do an audit. We promise if you certify. They were lying. And now the Republicans have rescinded their agreement to certify. And this is just going on and on and on. And what Reince is saying is true. They attacked our president for 3 years on a Russia hoax based on a fake dossier. We are pursuing real claims based on authentic, under oath affidavits and evidence. There is a huge difference, and the media followed that hook, line, and sinker, and they won't pay attention to these real things that we are seeing on the ground across the country.
All right, we're going to keep following the story. The mob is ignoring. Amazing, because they bought every conspiracy theory on Russia for 3 years, and they lied for 3 years. All right.